All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship, the number one self declared debt payoff YouTube channel. So, taking some inspirations from dictators who declared themselves to be the king of the country and somehow became it. I self declare that this is the number one debt payoff channel on YouTube. And one day we'll get this plaque someday. And I was actually thinking, like, really, how do we get here? Because I was watching Dave Ramsey's channel and I love the work that Dave Ramsey does. And it's like, dang, maybe I need to follow his steps, make it more professional, get an editor, and so on and so forth, which I think I will do. Right. Someone actually offered me to edit my videos. So we'll see. Now, as the number one debt payoff channel, I'll tell you what we do that's different from all the other debt payoff channels that I've seen. We actually use spreadsheets, okay? Everybody else on YouTube, for some reason, uses a whiteboard. Get with the modern times with the 1983 Excel technology. In fact, if we just do a Google search, when was Excel made, right? Microsoft Excel, 1985. Okay. I thought it was 1983 for some reason, but yes, let's get with the times with the 1985 technology and pay off debt. And that's what we're going to do today, using something that we now call the velocity method. And so the first step to paying off debt, okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's creating a spreadsheet. Okay, income, expenses, leftover checking and savings, and then you do an expense breakdown and you list every single debt that you have. In fact, the more debt that you have compared to your income, the better that it is, because you have to think about what your number would be if all your debt, let's say, were erased, and you see that's a pretty good number, $4,000 a month, which is our potential, right? So imagine that you had all of your debt erased and you're still negative. That's a totally different situation than someone who has the potential to be positive. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. And so when in our expense breakdown, we have to list every single debt that we have, and our whole goal is to get rid of all this debt. And then on the last line item, we just tie our personal expenses that are not tied to debt. So things we have to pay for every single month: food, gas, insurance, and all that other stuff, right? So things that we have to pay for. And what we're gonna do is that we're going to assume that we have the same income, same debt, same expenses, right? And how can we make this number into a much bigger number, especially in the onset, right? Without making more money, just simply by changing the flow of money, but not necessarily change our expenses. Well, I'll tell you, the first step that you have to make to get rid of debt is to not save money, right? So this whole saving money thing, I think it's like a contradiction, right? Because if you have savings and you have debt, that literally having savings means that you're not paying off debt, right? So that's why, like, Dave Ramsey's step number one, or baby step number one, and I think to save $1,000 is kind of flawed. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw all of our money into something called a line of credit and focus on this cash flow number. Now, this cash flow number looks the same when you look at the left side and the right side. So the difference between the left side and the right side is more conceptual than anything. It's more philosophical, because on the left side, it's basically we're saying, how do we treat our checking account, right? Is it the final destination of our money, or is it just a temporary stop? Now, the left side treats the checking account as the final destination of our money, whereas the right side treats the checking account as just a temporary stop, and we dump all of our money into a line of credit. Now, why a line of credit? Because it's the only financial tool that the bank offers where you could throw all your money in, take it out, and put it back in again, right? Like, basically, the moment you dump all your $6,000 monthly pay into the line of credit, like seconds after, you could just pull it out and there's no problem. And that's what's really amazing about the tool. So it gives you ultimate flexibility so that you don't worry about putting all your money into debt and not being able to take it out, right? And I know I'm making a big deal about this, but think about why people don't overpay debts. Because even with a credit card, even though a credit card is technically a line of credit, when you dump that entire $6,000 paycheck into a credit card, well, how do we pay credit card two, three, and four, right? How do we pay, an auto loan with the credit card, Or if we decide to dump all our money to a mortgage, we definitely cannot pay the other debts, right? Like this, that's impossible. So that's why a lot of people get confused with overpaying debts because they don't know that there's a line of credit or a personal home equity line of credit that they can use to overpay the debts, right? Which is what we're going to do today. So, an assumption that we're going to make is that we're going to have access to a $60,000 free and clear line of credit. But we always have to point the elephant in the room, right? What's the elephant in the room? Is that banks don't lend money to people who need it. All right. Banks don't lend money to people who need it because people who need money don't pay you back. Right. And so you might be saying, like, well, why do you demonstrate this with the free and clear line of credit? Yeah, in my opinion, it's actually easier to understand the concept of the free and clear line of credit than even a realistic scenario. Because you know what happens with the realistic scenario? This is actual real life scenario 22 debts. Well, with the realistic scenario, you have a bunch of debt and you have a maxed out line of credit, and then the whole process becomes so much more complicated when you start off doing it with the maxed out line of credit. And so what we're going to demonstrate is free and clear line of credit because it's actually easier to understand the concept, believe it or not. So yeah, so we're gonna assume we have a $60,000 8% home equity line of credit. But remember, banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? So this is kind of like a chicken and the egg scenario where you have to get all the credit before you ever need it, and most people don't do that, right? Because they always like the bank rejects like 90% of applicants because so many people are trying to go to the bank when they need money. Okay, that's really literally what they're trying to do. Okay. And so now what we're going to do is strategically move money into the line of credit to increase our cash flow. And if you don't know what the cash flow index is, just basically a formula. What is that formula? It's basically the debt balance divided by the monthly payment. Okay. Debt balance divided by monthly payment. And then if you scroll down, basically this is a very high number. And what's the difference between all these numbers? Well, think of this as a ranking system for paying off debt. And so the higher the number, that's the one you want to pay off last, and the lower the number, that's when you want to pay off first, right? So take a look at this mortgage. For this mortgage, you literally have to pay someone $250,000 for only $1,100 cash flow. Whereas if you pay off, let's say these two credit cards, that's only about, I think, 42,000. You're going to get more cash flow than the mortgage. That's why we pay off the credit cards first. So let's go ahead and sum it up. Okay, so 175, 260, 47.5, and then 855, and I'm going to go ahead and sum it up, and that's 1,000. No, wait a minute, I screwed up. I summed up the payments, not the balances. Let me redo this again. 5, 8, 15, 27. 27. My brain's in autopilot mode right now, but it's 55,000. Okay, so what we're gonna do is move 55,000 of the credit cards into the line of credit, and then take a look here. Right, so now we literally went from $202 to $1979 of cash flow. We literally did this in an instant without making more money. And I know that's really amazing, right? So if you just kind of stare at this, okay, you stare at this and then you realize, whoa, like, how do we get from here to here? And that's really the magic of A, having a line of credit, and B, not saving money, right? Because what is this strategy? It's just, if you deconstruct it, it's literally just not saving money with the help of a line of credit, right? Like this whole velocity method that we're talking about is literally just not saving money with the help of a line of credit. Saving but not saving money 2.0. You can think of it like that, right? Okay. And then now the final step is that with our increased cash flow, we dump our entire paycheck into the line, take our expenses out so that we pay all these other expenses that we have, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. So I'm going to just go ahead and do this. And so to get the next month's balance, you get the previous month's balance, interest minus our cash flow. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the average daily balance, multiply it by the interest rate, and then divide by 12. And then I'm going to copy and paste this, and then I'm going to copy here, and then, and we see that in month 31, we paid off all of our credit card debt. Look how easy that was. You see, all I did was just copy and paste, and it's kind of like set it and forget it. You guys remember those old commercials where it's like set it and forget it, and he's like roasting a chicken? That was like commercials I used to watch as a kid in the 90s. And by the way, did you know that what was it, QVC went bankrupt? I think they did. Or was it Home Shop? One of them went bankrupt. Yeah. But it's not like, liquidation bankruptcy. I think it's like, yeah, chapter 11. So it's a restructuring bankruptcy. But yeah, so that is what it is. But let me just do set it and forget it. Set it and forget it. Yeah, the Ronco Showtime rotisserie chicken. I don't know how to say his name. Ron Popeil. Set it and forget it. That's how I feel about this debt payoff strategy. Because literally, I'm just copy and pasting. It's like, oh, just dump my paycheck into a line of credit. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. And then you just take your expenses out. And what do we have here? A 46,000 auto loan. Oh no. Okay. That's no bueno. But let's just see what we have here. So I will say that this is a low-end Porsche. So if you ever wanted to buy a low-end Porsche, just buy, 46,000 low-end Porsche. And then what we're going to do is let's take a look at the cash flow index. So right here is 23,000 left, and then we just move the 23,000 into the line of credit. Now I know what some of you are thinking, right? So some of you are thinking, well, why don't we focus on paying off the mortgage? It has a higher interest rate by 1%, right? And the reason why we're focusing on the 3% loan is not because of the interest rate itself, it's because what it represents in terms of our cash flow. So we literally paid 23 grand in exchange for $826, which is a good ratio compared to the 238 for about 1100, right? We're just thinking about the balance to payment ratio. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. And then it's going to be plus 23094.11. And then I'm just going to do this. So this is going to be $826 and $2,806. And I'm going to go right here. And then we'll just do the same thing. So this is our new updated cash flow because the auto loan has been paid off, right? Auto loan has been paid off to 806.46. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then we see that in month 40, it's been paid off. Okay. All right. So now that was incredibly easy. So 40 months. Okay. So 40 months, and then be 55 plus 46, and there'll be 101K, right? 101K. And then now the mortgage at 40 months, what is it? So 40, and then does it be 0? And we see that we have a $234,000 balance. Now we have two options when it comes to paying off 30-year mortgage. And you might hear silly things on the internet about how you should always move a mortgage into a line of credit. Now, the reason why we're confident in moving this 3% loan into the line of credit is because the amount of cash flow that we were going to get relative to the loan, which is why that 3% didn't really matter to us, right? And if we take a look here, we see that for every month we're using the line of credit, I mean, at the beginning, where was it? Let me go here. It was only $140 when we moved that car loan into the line of credit, and look how much the interest was for every single month, right? So it wasn't really that much, okay? Now, let me kind of go back here, all right? So now this is $234,000. Now, we have to be careful about 30-year mortgage, right? Because if you have an interest rate that's lower than your line of credit and a relatively high cash flow index, it literally means that you're not getting a lot of bang for your buck in terms of cash flow, because it's you got a big loan, a little bitty amount of cash flow. So the cash flow that you get is not really that much, right? Which is why we don't want to move the entire mortgage into a line of credit. You don't want to move a 4 to 8. But what people don't know is that if you move the loan into a line of credit in pieces, in incremental pieces, it's a completely different game. Okay? It's completely different. Now, we have two default options, right? So the first option you have is extra payments. And the synonym that I use for extra payments is actually decision fatigue, because that's really what people experience when overpaying a loan or even a line of credit, right? Or I'm sorry, a loan or a credit card, not a line of credit, even though a credit card is technically a line of credit. Whereas when you overpay a line of credit, there's no decision to be made. And that's why it's so easy to do, right? So that's why we might want to sweep, take a piece of the loan and move it into line of credit. And then all we have to think about is our checking account going to zero and our line of credit goes to zero. And the execution is really easy because your paycheck just flows in by default. And you don't really have to think, how much should I pay extra today or this month? See, extra payments is kind of like going to the gym in January, right? People say that they're going to do it and they never do it because people know, or the banks know, that overpaying a loan introduces friction to how your money moves between your bank accounts, right? That's why nobody does it. But when you do it with the line of credit, it's so easy. And let me just kind of show you here. All right. So let's say out of this $234,000, we take out 6,000, right? And we move it into a line of credit. And then this would just be plus 6000, right? And then we see here that in about 2 months, 1, 2, it gets completely paid off. And so every 2 months or so, we're just wiping out $6,000 in the mortgage and making it look super easy, right? And so if we actually type this into our calculator here, okay, let me just kind of show you here. We call this the sweep calculator. We used to call it something else, but not allowed to use those words anymore. So I'm just gonna do this, 250,000 original balance. What's the payment amount? So 1193.54. And let's just do a $6,000 sweep and a $6,000 income. And what's our living expenses? Everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So this 2,000 here, 2000. And then what's the current balance? Let's take a look. 234,614.48. So 234,614.48. And then we see that this is 28 grand. 28 grand of interest that we pay, even using an 8% line of credit. Now, here's a crazy thing, okay? Let's say that we couldn't get an 8% line of credit. And this is actually rare for home equity lines of credit to be anything more than like a 9 or a 10, right? But let's say the best line of credit we could get was 15%. Bam, look at that. This is only like one grand of interest more. And then we really think about it, that's just like a blip on the bank's balance sheet, right? Oh, 1 grand more, like that's nothing, okay? So this is why I say like, okay, like when it comes to a 30-year mortgage and you change the interest rate and you're making minimum payments, yes, that is a complete shift in how much you're paying, right? Like 1 percentage point making the monthly payment, aka the minimum payment, is going to ensure that you pay a lot more. But when you're doing it this method, you're kind of just using your line of credit as an easy bridge so that you can throw all your money into it and easily pay off that mortgage, right? Rather than directly paying it. And you might be thinking like, really? Like, would people pay a little bit extra for using line of credit as a bridge? Let me tell you something, okay? Big companies, they pay a ton of money for that kind of software. I don't know if you knew this or not, but middleware integrations market, right? So if you ever heard of like the integrations market, it literally means one piece of software talks to another, right? Like QuickBooks talks to Salesforce, and that market is 94 billion. So think about how valuable that is to a giant company for having a middleware to talk to, let's say, 2 pieces of software, and how much they're willing to pay for that convenience rather than doing it directly, if that makes sense. Okay. And it's the same thing here. Like, okay, we could overpay the mortgage directly, but I'm going to tell you, it's much more convenient to do it through a line of credit. And because the execution is so easy, it's much more likely to happen compared to overpaying a loan. Right. So it's just kind of a analogy that I'm trying to connect with, but I don't know if it's a really good connection, but just throwing that out there. And heck, even if I do a 30% line of credit, look how much interest I pay, 33 grand. Now, here's the other crazy thing too that you may have not known. If I do an 8% mortgage and I dump the entire loan into an 8% mortgage, look at that. That's so much more than even the 30%, right? So that's why I say use the line of credit as a bridge to incrementally pay off the loan, but don't put the entire loan into a line of credit. A lot of people screw this up. I see this on YouTube all the time where people just say, oh, throw every loan into a line of credit. And I'm like rolling my eyes like, what the F are you talking about? Right? So, yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and go back. So backwards. So that's 5.6 years, 28 grand. And that's what we're going to just write in our milestone. So it's going to be 0 and then 40 divided by 12 plus 5.8. Was it 5.8? Hold on. I have a bad math. 5.6. My bad. 5.6. And that's 8.93 years. And we are debt free. Okay. 8.93 years and we are completely debt free. All right. Okay, well, that's it for today, folks. Remember, this is the #1 debt payoff channel on YouTube. We'll get to 1 million subscribers one day. I might have to get a team to do that, though. But, every time I look at Caleb Hammer or Dave Ramsey's channel, I'm like, dang, man, I got to get there because I think a lot of people find this YouTube channel really useful, but I just don't have the reach. And I think, the latest algorithm change has kind of hurt a lot of YouTubers. But if you take a look at this, right, we make pretty much. I haven't been posting for like 2 months, so that kind of hurt the momentum of the channel. But you could see that now that I'm posting more, I'm getting 10,000 views a month and then almost $100 a month just by doing YouTube spreadsheets. So we gotta spread the word. We gotta evangelize. Maybe even do paid advertising. And we'll see how that goes. Right. Okay. Right. Well, have a great day, everybody. This is the #1 debt payoff channel, self-declared, signing off.